arriving. It's so great to see you here. My name is Katya Stepanov. I am the CEO and co-founder of the Inheritance Project, and I am thrilled. I'm thrilled to see you here today for our class on how to use the 7 skills for challenging conversations to be the bridge between us and all our relations. And I'm joined by my 2 co-founders, Mallory and Ariel. Give us a wave. You'll see them with other colored circles behind them. They're here supporting the session today. And they're also here to answer questions. So if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and Mallory or Ariel will answer them. And I'll also be inviting Mallory up to talk about our course at the end of the session. And I will be guiding about 60 minutes of content today, but we will be staying on for about 30 minutes for Q&A and discussion. So if you do need to leave right at 1 or in an hour, we'll finish all the content by then, but you are welcome to stay if you can, because we will stay until all questions are answered. So let's begin. I'm so happy that you're all here and to introduce Inheritance Project to you. And at Inheritance Project, we really believe that change begins within. And that, as Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that we used when we created them. Here because you might feel like you are a cycle breaker, an evolutionary leader, someone who is ready to be the change that you wish to see in the world. And maybe you're done checking the box and trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And you want to leave the world, your relationships, your workplace better than you found them, but maybe you're not sure how or where to begin. And that's where we come in. We are Inheritance Project, and we help leaders transform inherited patterns to create communities that love working together by building connection, empathy, trust, communication skills that are all of the skills that are really required to lead through uncertainty, times of great challenge, and also times of conflict. And maybe you're joining because escalating global conflict has into many new challenging conversations. Maybe you're joining because you can't stand to see the comment section on social media anymore, and you want to know how to connect with people who are on a completely different perspective from you. Maybe you're joining because you are experiencing a conflict at work. Maybe it's a challenging relationship with your coworker, your manager. And maybe you are put in the position of mediating conflicts on teams or in your community. So whatever reason brought you here, whether it's personal, whether it's about work, whether it's about a relationship, all of you are welcome. And these tools will help you in all of these interpersonal relationships. So today we're going to cover 3 of the 7 skills for conversations. And that is the focus of our 7-week Bridge Builders Conflict Resolution and Leadership Program that starts in March 2024. And the skills that I'm going to share with you, these principles, these are the skills that we use to guide thousands of leaders and companies, from large global finance service companies to nonprofits to universities, VC-backed startups, nonprofits, and more. And this is going to be our 2nd cohort of opening this work up to the public so that individuals, self-identified leaders from any industry, field, or background can all have access to these life-changing tools. And so in this 60-minute session, you will learn 3 of these skills, and you'll also get a sneak peek of our course and our online learning platform, as well as a special bonus if you stay until the end of the session today. And before we formally begin, I want to be really clear about the scope of today's workshop and the content that I'm going to share. These are skills that are designed to support you in resolving conflict in your immediate circle of relations. So people that you have real life relationships with, coworkers, family, friends. These are not skills designed to solve political issues, world wars, or any other type of violent conflict. So if the conflict is violent, it's out of scope for these skills and the approach that we have, okay? So I want us to be really clear about that scope, and we're going to uphold that boundary. So let's start with a quick practice to help us arrive, help us be present for our time together. If you feel comfortable, I invite you to unglue your eyes from the screen for a moment, give them a much needed respite. I invite you, if you feel comfortable, to actually close your eyes for a few minutes. And if that's not comfortable for you, you can just let your eyes rest somewhere that they can really rest and relax. We're going to take a moment for an introspective break. And we'll begin with 3 breaths. So, really feeling your seat beneath you, lengthening your spine, taking a deep inhale into the nose, and a big exhale out from the mouth. And maybe with this next breath, you let out a little sound, a little sigh. Deep breath in, and sigh it out. One more. Deep breath in, filling up belly, ribs, chest. And big open mouth exhale, letting something go. And if it feels good, maybe you add a little movement, little neck roll, anything that allows you to really tap into how you're feeling today. Noticing the physical sensations of your breath, noticing anything that you might be experiencing in your body without trying to change it in any way, just bringing some awareness to that. And we're going to take a moment to go on a little visualization journey. And if visualization doesn't resonate for you, you can just listen to my words and let that land in your body. And we like to begin all our workshops with the acknowledgement of the miracle and our presence in this Zoom room and in our lives. We are unlikely occurrences. It's said that the chances of you being born are 1 in 400 trillion. So I want you to pause for a moment, let that sink in, that to stand in the places you have been, to have seen that blooming flower, that perfect sunrise, to bump shoulders with a stranger that becomes your friend, to be here right now, knowing what you know, seeing what you've seen, loving who you love, the odds are nearly impossible. And in the previous 12 generations alone, you needed over 4,000 ancestors. So I invite you to imagine for a moment their lifetimes, experiences, the chance encounters, the challenges and the love stories that took place so that you could be sitting here, breathing, reflecting on your extraordinary existence. And each of us is a unique reflection of the experiences, lessons, stories, lives of the generations past. It's those caretakers, those family members, those friends, those artists, those leaders, those teachers, those communities that held them, that helped shape us into who we are today. And they are your inheritance, and you are their legacy. So wherever you are today, whatever you came with, whatever is present with you now, remember that you are an unlikely occurrence, sharing space with equally unlikely miracles on a precious blue planet, spinning in an unfathomably large universe, leading improbable existences. And I invite you to stay with that image for a moment and take one more breath to honor all that came before us. Deep breath in and a deep breath out. And in your own time, as you're ready, I invite you to come back into our virtual shared room together. And I invite you to share one word in the chat about how you're feeling right now after that brief visualization. Centered, perspective, gratitude, grounded, unique, renewed, honored. I love these words, beautiful, family, thoughtful, humbled. Thank you. You can continue to share if you haven't shared yet. I'd like to take a moment to define this word that I just said, and that's at the center of our company, inheritance. What do I mean when I say inheritance? Am I talking about the house, the grandmother's pearls, the little box of trinkets that you were given from your family? No, I'm not talking about that when I say inheritance. That's the definition of inheritance that we inherited. But actually, inheritance is so much wider, more vast, more beautiful, and more complex than that. Our inheritance includes our ancestry, our culture, our beliefs, our values, our stories, our social conditions, our traits, our perspectives, all that we have received from past generations. And it shapes the way that we work, that we collaborate, that we communicate with others. And this essential context is often the unacknowledged piece in the workplace, in workplace conversations, and it leads to misunderstanding and conflict, especially on virtual teams. So today we're going to explore how the behavioral patterns that we inherited from our caretakers, our cultures of origin, influence the way that we handle conflict and influence the way that we communicate both in our work and in our personal lives. And we're going to introduce you to the 7 skills for challenging conversations so that you can help find common ground and turn conflicts into opportunities for deeper connection and better relations. And this is only an introduction. These skills are an art, not a science. They require practice. So if you're interested in continuing to learn these skills and a group of people to practice them with, that's what we would love to support you with. And I'm going to share more about that at the end of our session. Let's also define conflict. For the purposes of this session, we're going to define conflict as a struggle resulting from opposing needs, drives, wishes, or demands. And conflict is an essential component to constructive change. And yet many of us inherit limiting beliefs and patterns related to conflict that actually prevent us from the meaningful advocacy and the effective communication that we want to have, especially across lines of difference. So who am I and why am I talking to you about inheritance, about conflict, about any of these topics? I want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Katya Stepanov, but actually I was born with a different name. I was born in Minsk, Belarus, 4 days after the Soviet Union collapsed, to a Jewish mother and a Russian Ukrainian father. And my name was Yekaterina Olegovna Stepanova. That's my birth name. When I came to the United States as a Jewish refugee. And as a Ukrainian, Belarusian Jewish refugee growing up in New Jersey, I was really grappling in my early childhood with 2 completely different worldviews: the post-Soviet culture that I was experiencing in my home, and then the American culture that I was being. And this was both my burden and a source of great pain for me, this feeling of not belonging, of I'm not Russian, Belarusian, Ukrainian enough to be any of those things. I'm not American enough to be American. I don't understand where I fit in. So the term third culture kid is something I found later in my life. People who create a third culture when they're between 2 cultures, but 2 cultures, it allowed me to see something that I think is invisible to those who grow up in one culture, which is that we inherit the way that we see the world, and it is shaping the way that we behave and show up. And I became a cultural translator for my parents and my family and the American society that we were growing and I started to be that culture translator. So it forced me as a child to become aware of how we communicate and how our cultural worldview shapes the way that we behave. And so this invisible piece for a lot of others was very obvious to me. And I carried this with me into my career as an actor, as a team building instructor, as someone who learned yoga and mindfulness. I carried it through in my understanding that this conversation is often what brings us closer together and connects us. So when we make the invisible visible, we can actually see all of our similarities and all of our differences without assuming. So, if you met me in the street, you would have no idea about the fact that these things, right? That I'm Jewish. You wouldn't know these things just by looking at me. So a lot of this work is about making what is invisible about ourselves visible to each other so that we can stop making assumptions and stories about each other and actually learn who we are and give each of us a voice and a chance to share our unique inheritance. And the other reason that I'm teaching about conflict I grew up in a very chaotic environment. My parents, I love them and I don't blame them, but they did not have the tools to regulate their nervous systems as young 20-something immigrants growing up in a very scary place where they didn't speak the language. I mean, there's so much that was going on for them, and they didn't know how to regulate complex PTSD. And in my own life, I really found myself grappling with this and saying, I need to do something about this, right? I co-founded Inheritance Project because I felt that this lens of investigating our inherited behavioral pattern was often overlooked in professional workplace, in professional development, to be able to navigate working with groups who all have different types of inheritance, right? So these conversations are left out of the spaces where the tools would make the greatest difference for all involved. Oh, is my internet struggling? Okay, one moment. Let me switch. Hmm. Let me see what I can do about that. Is it okay right now? Can you all hear me? You can hear me
Kat-
now. Okay.
Katya, we
Let me
can
know
hear
if I
you.
go, let me know if I go out again, and I might just turn my video off for a
Yeah,
moment to make the connection better,
yeah. Every
and then
few
come back.
seconds we
So,
lose a couple words. That's all.
okay. Well, let me turn the video off for a moment, so I can keep going. Is this better? Hopefully it is. So on the next slide, you're going to see a graphic. That's one of my favorite graphics that we've created. I don't know. Oh, there we go. Thanks, Mallory. So as you can see on this graphic, most of the time when we're having difficulty communicating with someone, we're responding to a specific behavior that we're experiencing from them. And the reality is that our behavior is only what you can see on the surface. And underneath are all of these other aspects that are influencing the behavior that you see, right? The thoughts, the beliefs, the emotions, the values, the stories, and the needs that are going on for this individual. We're just behavior. That's the surface level. So, how do we understand all of the things underneath, right? How do we get to the bottom of why we are behaving the way we are and why others are behaving the way they are so that we can understand each other better? So today we're going to introduce these skills to you in a new way. There are 7 skills. They are pause and breathe, notice assumptions and stories, lead with curiosity, receive and acknowledge others' shares, name what's in the space, communicate your and requests, and find common ground. And each of these skills is about a week's worth of content in our course. So I'm not going to be able to deliver all of it to you in this session today. But if you at the end of this are thinking, I want to learn them, we want to help you do that in our upcoming course. Today, we're going to look at the first 3: pause and breathe. But it is actually one of the most challenging things to do when we are faced with conflict. So let's understand a little more about our nervous system and about why breathing can be such a valuable tool in conflict situations. Can you drop a 1 in the chat if you find conflict stressful or get anxious before having a hard conversation with someone? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of 1s come in. So for those of you that are typing 1, you can see in the chat, you are not alone. This is an almost universal experience of facing a challenging conversation, right? So I want to talk to you all about the sympathetic state and what happens in your body when you are in a sympathetic state, which also is often called survival mode. When we are activated or we perceive danger in our environment, even if it is perceived danger, we experience a shift into the sympathetic state of the nervous system. And some of the things that you might experience in your body when you're moving into a sympathetic state is what you see on the screen right now. So you might experience shortness or quickening of breath, elevated heart rate, sweating or feeling hot, tightness in your chest or stomach, racing thoughts. And that's what you're experiencing on a physiological level, but all the things that are going on unconsciously that are contributing to that are the things on the right column, right? Your body's releasing stress hormones into the bloodstream, adrenaline and cortisol. Blood flow reduces in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. And the prefrontal cortex is the part of our mind that is responsible for empathy, our brain that differentiates humans from all other mammals and gives us access to all of the skills we need to actually find common ground. So if we know we don't make our best decisions when we are stressed and activated, then how do we move out of that state so that we can actually address the conflict that we're experiencing? And when we're experiencing a sympathetic state, we usually default to one of these four most common reactions. You'll see them on the next slide. They're probably familiar to you, and if they're not, I'm excited to share them with you. So the four survival reactions that we typically default to when we're in a sympathetic state are fight, facing a perceived threat aggressively, flight, running away from danger, freeze, being unable to move or act, or fawn, placating the other person to avoid conflict. And if you are not sure what your default state or conflict style is, ask the people in your surrounding inner circle because they know. And I want you to take a moment to think about which of these you most typically default to at work. And if you feel comfortable, I invite you to write it in the chat. Which of these reactions do you tend to default to at work? And I want to say that these reactions are learned behaviors based on different context. We all have a different inheritance and context. We all have learned different responses to survive. This is why understanding our inheritance is so important, right? And the other thing I want to share is that these survival reactions are not bad or good. In certain situations, they are essential for our survival. If someone is veering into your lane on the highway, you want your nervous system to flee because you're avoiding a crash, right? Like in that situation, this is a completely appropriate response from your nervous system. Unfortunately, we tend to perceive danger disagreeing with us in a conversation. And in that situation, this response becomes maladaptive and it gets in our way of actually reaching common ground in that moment. So what do we do about this? The exciting news is that there is something that we can do. And that is to access and harness the power of our breath. There's no specific sequence to the 7 skills, but pause and breathe is always the first one. It's the first thing to do and it's the hardest. And one of the empowering facts that I want to share with you is will shift your nervous system out of a sympathetic survival state and into a parasympathetic state. And that is because it is a way for us to actually relate to our vagus nerve, the nerve that is connecting all of our organs, helping us to manage all of the different cortisol and stress releases that are going on in our body. So your breath is the remote control of your nervous system. And you are actually able to control some part of what through your breath. So our breath is the one thing that we do both consciously and unconsciously. And what I want to share with you in the time that we have today is that the best breath pattern to use in a high stakes or high stress situation is to elongate your exhales. It's the simplest thing that you can do if you're in a high stakes environment, if you're in a meeting that is turning really tense, if you're experiencing any of the sympathetic state responses in your body. The first thing that you can do is simply lengthen your breath. Okay, so we are actually going to do a really quick breath practice together of elongating our exhales. So I'd invite you to join me in this and take an inhale for 4 breaths Inhaling for 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhaling for 5. 1, 2, 3, 5. Now let's inhale again for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's exhale for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more round. Inhaling for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's try exhaling for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And just notice, even in that brief practice, any subtle shifts that you experienced in your body. And if you did experience a subtle shift, I invite you to write it in the chat. So this is an imperceivable breath practice that you can do anytime. This is just one practice. And one of the best parts about the work that we do and the course that we're leading is that you get access to 7 weeks of different breath practices that will become part of your toolbox, so that any time that you're feeling yourself in an activated state, you have real tools, not something vague, not something researched breath practice that you know that you can depend on in that moment. So I'm excited to show you more about that in a little bit. So we talked about the first of the 7 skills, pause and breathe. Let's talk about the second through a game. The second is going to play a game together called What Do You See? Oh, you're all struggling to hear me. All right, I'm gonna try to switch to my hotspot, but I might drop out for a moment. Mallory, do you want to take over just for the introduction of this while I get my Wi-Fi back online?
Sure, I'm happy to introduce this game. It's called What Do You See? It's really simple. We're going to play 2 rounds. The first round, we're going to show an image and you're just going to tell me what you see. This sounds very simple, but it's actually extremely challenging, because what you're not going to tell me is your stories, your assumptions, or your interpretations about what's going on in the photo. I just want pure neutral observations about what you see. And how we're going to play is, for the people who are, or if you want to play, please turn your video on. That will give us a signal that you want to be engaged, and we will call on you by name and we'll say, hey, Katya, what do you see? And you'll respond, you'll come off mute and you'll say, I see, and you'll give us a neutral observation about what you see in the image. And if we notice that you happen to be throwing in a little smidge of interpretations, stories, or assumptions about what might be going on, we will just gently pause you and say, hey, I noticed that this is an assumption. Please, can you rephrase that as a neutral observation? So that's going to be round 1. Round 2, you'll have creative freedom to go into all the stories you desire about each image. But for now, round 1, we're just going to focus on the pure neutral observations. Does this make sense to everyone? Great. Katya, looks like you're back. I'm going to pass the mic
Yes.
to you.
Hopefully this is going to be much better. I'm sorry for my connection issues, everyone. I know that's frustrating when you're trying to listen to someone deliver information. So thank you for bearing with me. And let me know if it gets bad again, and I'll try something else. So the other piece I want to share is that this game comes from the world of theater. It comes from Augusto Boal and Theater of the Oppressed. And the purpose is to really exercise this muscle. It's like a muscle. We have to practice it. We have to practice and train ourselves to make neutral observations. It's one of the hardest things for the human mind to do, because we're designed to be meaning-making story machines. So I'm gonna tell you, if you feel like this is hard, you're doing it right, okay? And to make it even more engaging, I actually think I'll invite you all to make observations in the chat. That way we can hear from more voices, and I'll be able to see and call out what I'm seeing is not an observation and ask you to reframe it as an observation, okay? So get on the chat, everyone. Get engaged. Let's look at our first image. So take a moment, take it in. And write in the chat, what do you see? Conversation. Okay. So, Miles, actually, I love that you started with that because conversation is an interpretation. I'm going to ask you, what are you observing about these two people that makes you say they're having a conversation? Okay. I see
Sure.
two people. So, yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead. What are you seeing?
There's two people. They're leaning in, like the one at the left has her head cocked, especially the one on the right. She's especially, like you can see
I'm
her
going to pause you
language.
there. I'm going to
Uh-huh.
pause you there. She is also a story. What tells you that this person is she? What are you observing?
I mean, body.
Sure. So it's okay to be specific. So body meaning breasts.
Sure. I mean, I don't know how
Great.
she
Okay. This
identifies
person, this
herself,
person
but
has
yes.
breasts,
Uh-huh.
but we don't know how they identify themselves.
True.
That was yes. Okay. So we don't know. So we can't assume. So we can say person, right? Just
Sure.
for neutral observation. This is an important teaching point. Thank you for being with me in this.
No
Okay. So
problem.
we have, go on, go on.
Oh, so their hands are clasped. This appears to be looking like making some sort of a point or a resting state.
So do
Uh,
you see how right away hands are clasped and right away the mind's like, this is appears to be. So then we interpret it. So
right.
let's doing so well. So hands are clasped. They're looking at each other. This is great. Okay. I'm going to move on for the sake of time to the next photo. But
Okay.
everyone that's in the chat, you're doing great. It's going to get harder with each image. What do we see? What can we observe in a neutral way? It's challenging. And when if you notice your brain trying to jump to a story, ask yourself, how do I know that? What am I observing about the body language I'm seeing? Can I name it specifically instead of the interpretation? Okay. So, all right, we have one person is standing. Frustration, Eve, frustration is a story. What tells you? Why are you interpreting it as frustration? Can you get more specific? We have five people in a work setting interacting with each other. People in a group problem solving. So again, I see people in a group is an observation, problem solving is a story. One person's holding their head in their hands. Deb, yes. Okay, that is a neutral observation about body language. One person is holding their head in their hands is great. Can we go more in that direction? Four people sitting around focused on the person standing with tons of papers and laptops. Great. These are all neutral observations. One person has a furrowed brow is great. The person standing is leaning in is great. Yes, you're getting it. So let's see. What else are we not naming that we can name that we see? Five people around a table, four seated, one standing. One of the seated has their index fingers on their temples. This is great. One person is holding a pen. You are getting it. These are all neutral observations without stories. Wonderful. Let's go on to the next image, Mallory. Let's try our best to make neutral observations about this image. What do we see? One person has their head in their hands. Great. Two people, one seated, one with their head in their hands. Two people are facing away from each other. One person is standing with their hand on their forehead. Great. Two people not looking at each other. That's also great. This is great. You're doing amazingly well. So I'm seeing a lot of that. Okay, great. What else can we observe about them in a neutral way? I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to push you just a little farther. One person is facing in the direction of the other person is facing away. Can we neutrally describe the people in any way? One person is holding their body. Both have long hair. That's great, Miles. Yes. What else can we observe? One person has a nose ring. Excellent, Kennedy. Yes. Both are wearing long sleeves. These are great. Sitting has shoulder more raised, the other has their shoulders down. So these are so specific. I want you to give yourselves, we're going to pause here for this round. Please give yourselves a round of applause. It's really, really, really hard to play this game. And you really got the hang of it, okay? I will say Audra appears to be an apartment versus an office is a story or interpretation. We don't know, right? We can't know for sure. But now I'm going to totally flip the switch, okay? And it's going to be a little hard for your brain because you're like, well, I don't want to make assumptions. So now I want you to actually let yourself make assumptions completely, okay? I want to hear all of your most imaginative stories and interpretations about what is happening on the images, okay? So let's go back to the first one. What's the story here? Tell me your stories that you see in this image. Performance review, mentorship, a friendly exchange, delivering bad news, a catch up between friends. The one on the left is upset and defensive. The lady on the right is interviewing the person on the left. Okay, great. Who else has a totally different story besides interview or conversation? Like, what else could be going on here? They're breaking up. Thank you, Leslie. What else could be happening here? The woman standing just found out that her guy likes the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think that's for a different image, but I like it. Giving unwanted advice. That's her daughter. Speed dating. They're on a date. They're making plans for Thanksgiving dinner. Amazing. Conflict resolution. I love it. Let's go to the next image. What is the story here? What's going on? Let's see. Who can tell me? Telepathy. Miles, I love that. She's telepathically communicating. The dude is mansplaining. Thank you. Everyone is sick of the man standing mansplaining. Great, we got that story. What else might be going on? Brainstorming, thinking about something challenging, having fun. These people hate this meeting. Their boss sucks. Everyone's tired. They just spent all day working on data reports, and their boss changed their mind on what he wanted. Anna says she has a migraine. I love that. Love that totally different story. Could have been an email. That makes me laugh. They're wondering about the turtleneck, kind of dated. Thank you, Miles. Okay, what else could be going on here that we haven't heard? Does someone have like a totally other story? That was my idea. Okay, I love it. Let's move on to the next image. What's the story here? Marriage story. Okay, tell me more, Deb. What's the story? What's going on? Okay, bad news about a family member. Love that, Casey. Miles, how did I get suckered into this stock photo? That's funny. Brother and sister fighting. I love that. Kate says he spent too much money. They're having the same fight that they've had for the last 5 years, says Deb. Lydia says pregnancy again, and they already have 4 kids. Eve says sadness over a lost pregnancy. Leslie says he had an affair. Mary says thinking about what they want to do this weekend. Joanna says husband and wife are stressed out about finances. Oh my gosh, all coming in. He wants her to trust that they work things out, but she doesn't feel safe. They have to move to another state. They can't agree on a TV show. They're complaining about the mother-in-law. Amazing. Look at how many stories, including he let the cat eat the plant again. Very relatable for me. How many stories there are from just one image. So I'm going to pause here. What are we learning from this exercise? Someone please raise your Zoom hand that wants to share one insight that you're gleaning from this exercise. And how does this relate to conflict? Great. Kate, go ahead.
Absolutely. Don't assume. Don't make assumptions because you're in dangerous waters. And so it's just really important to keep an open mind and to me, I'm always big on give people the benefit of the doubt. First, seek to understand. So yeah, very powerful.
Absolutely. Audra.
What hit me was nobody really knows what the heck is going on because I mean, there's 25 of us and we had probably 30 or 40 different stories. And so it's impossible to know just by observation what's really happening.
Absolutely. And those 30 different stories, what are all those stories informed by?
yeah, whatever filter I'm bringing into the conversation, whether it's something from when I grew up or something that just happened 10 minutes ago.
I'm celebrating that answer. Absolutely.
Love the snaps.
It comes from our inheritance, right? It comes from the way that we see the world. And so if we recognize that, and we recognize that we're all doing this without trying to, right? It's just happening automatically in our minds. Then how often are we wrong about the stories that we're making up about the conflict that we're in or the people that we are in conflict with? Right? I'm gonna, Stephanie, your hand's raised. I want you to have a chance to share, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, just really quickly, also the behaviors that other people are, making in front of us, we're creating these stories around their behaviors. Going back to behavior, yeah, and everything that's underneath that, we are also creating our own assumptions around why they're doing or saying whatever that is.
100%. Absolutely. And what are some of the most common assumptions that we make about people that are the most dangerous are how they're feeling, how they identify themselves. This is a really challenging one, but how they identify themselves, right? Until we have a conversation with someone, we don't know what gender they identify as, what race they identify as, what culture they identify with. And yet so often we're reducing people to assumptions about them based on just what we can see with our eyes and the behavior that we're observing, right? So this is where it becomes dangerous and especially leads us into conflict with one another. So this leads me to the third skill, which is lead with curiosity. And lead with curiosity is, if you're going to take away just one thing from this seminar, it is how to turn all of those assumptions that we're making. First of all, how to not judge ourselves for making assumptions, because clearly we all do it. It's part of the human condition. So if we know that we're going to make stories up and assumptions up based on our inheritance, then we can challenge ourselves to, one, notice what are the neutral observations and what are the stories I made up about it? And then what are the questions that I could really ask the people in the situation so that they have a chance to tell me what's going on underneath the behavior that I observed, right? And some of the best ways to lead with curiosity are some of the language that we see here on the slide, right? What was your experience of that moment? I'd love to understand your perspective on XYZ. And if someone starts to share with you and you feel like there's more to it, tell me more. How often? So one of the tools and one of the key nuggets we like to share in our trainings is speaking in draft. When you're in a conflict, how often is the first thing you say the thing you really mean? Is there anyone here who's like, the first thing that I say is exactly what I meant to say? If there's someone here like that, please tell me if you exist, because I have yet to meet anybody who has that ability, right? We speak in draft, right? And so if we're speaking in draft, likely the people we're speaking to are also speaking in draft. And how do we get underneath that to what they really mean? It's by asking genuine questions, right? And so there's a caveat to this, which is how we ask. How many of you here have asked the question, are you okay? From the place of, are you okay because I need you to be okay so I can be okay? Who is the culprit of having done that in the past? I know I have, right? When I'm asking, are you okay because I need you to be okay? That's not a genuine question. It's coming from an intention that isn't genuine curiosity, right? I don't have space to really listen to how you're feeling because it's full of how I'm feeling. So one of the challenges of leading with curiosity is to regulate our nervous system first, right? Pause and breathe, write out our assumptions and stories, prepare the questions that we want to ask someone, and check in with ourselves. Am I asking this question from the heart? Or am I asking it to confirm a belief I already have, to confirm a story I already have, or because it's something I really need in this moment? That's going to be a great filter for how you ask the people that you are having tension or conflict with, right? So we're going to put all of this into practice, each of you, for yourselves. How many of you can identify at least one situation or conflict or tension between you and someone else that keeps you up at night? Show me your hands if you can think of something. Okay, I'm seeing that most of us can. Yeah, I'm sure there's at least one conflict that we're all experiencing at any given time. So first of all, clearly you're not alone. No matter who you are, the quality of your life is defined by the quality of your relationships. So in order to make this actionable, you're going to choose a situation that you're either currently having or you've had, and you're going to have a chance to apply these 3 skills to the situation right now. So I invite you to get your pen and paper. If you like and you don't want to write, you can reflect on it in the time that we're going to give you. We're going to give you a few minutes to write down what happened, identify the sequence of events as you remember it, including who was involved, identify which behaviors provoked you. What did the person specifically say or do? And then what's the story that you've created about the situation and the person involved, excuse me, and see if you can pull out some neutral observations about the situation, and then a few questions that you might be able to ask them. So we're going to give you a few minutes to journal about this. And if you don't get to all of it right now, don't worry, you're going to get a replay of this workshop and you can do this anytime. And I encourage you to do it every time that you experience something that activates you. So we'll play a little music and then we'll return to this content. We might be struggling with the music playing, so we'll have a moment of silence while you reflect on this. You got a little bit of time to reflect on a conflict in your life. Going to stop the share now. You are going to get these questions and these slides in the follow-up. So just know you can return to that exercise anytime. And with the time that we have, I would love to hear from 3 people. What is your biggest takeaway from this session? And if you are more comfortable writing in the chat, you're also all welcome to reflect on this in the chat before you leave. Just a moment to think, what's my biggest takeaway from the 3 skills so far? And if you're open to sharing, I invite you to raise your Zoom hand. I see Andreas, ask more questions even if they're hard to ask. Absolutely. Who else has a takeaway? I need to practice breathing, says Raphael. Great. Well, we'd love to support you with that. Miles says, slow down and be curious. Maria says, make neutral observations. Yes. Great. I invite you to continue to reflect on this. Okay, Leslie says it's incredibly hard work, takes time, will take a lifetime of practice. Absolutely. These are not, the thing about these skills is that they're relational, right? So often when we're in a conflict situation, we think we need to solve it by ourselves. And some of the shifts that we are working on making with our nervous system and the way we relate to each other, they're relational skills that need to be practiced in relationship. So part of what is so incredible about being in a cohort and learning these skills together is that you have a space outside of this conflict, outside of these relationships, to actually practice these skills with each other. And I see here, I'm curious about where the process goes from here, which is great. Thank you for that segue, because I would love to share with you how you can learn the remaining 4 skills and how we can support you in that. So drop a 1 in the chat if you would like to hear more about the 7 skills and what we have coming up. Amazing. I see some ones coming in the chat. So I'm going to actually pass the word to Mallory to introduce our training that we have coming up in March. And then I'll also share a sneak peek with all of you, and then have space for Q&A, discussion, and questions.
Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to hear your deep insights and reflections and get to share a little slice of this framework with you, because it's really changed my life and the way that I approach my work and relationships. And starting at the end of March, we have a 7-week online program where you get the chance to really learn and integrate these skills, because just like Leslie said, this is a lifelong work. It's not something that you can fully learn in a 1-hour quick workshop. It's something that takes a lot of time to integrate and practice. And this program is for you if you want to go deeper into these skills, if you want to learn really practical tools for approaching hard conversations in new and more effective ways. If you're sick of being stuck in the same loops and cycles in your work relationships, in your personal relationships, and you're ready to break out of that pattern and actually create really thriving collaborations in your life and your work. And obviously, with everything going on in the world right now, with the intensity of the debates on social media, I think we can all see that these skills are needed more than ever. And we need more and more leaders like you who want to reach across the aisle and build bridges instead of continuing these patterns of division. And that's why this program is called Bridge Builders. And it will also give you an opportunity to reflect on and explore your own inheritance and your identity, and how that's those life experiences, the way that you identify, whether it's your socioeconomic status you grew up in, your culture, your creed, the country that you're from, how all of those things also influence you as a leader and a communicator. So often, leadership and communication skills training is taught from a particular lens or one particular cultural perspective. And it's a really big part of our mission that to make space for everyone to bring the unique gifts of your inheritance into your leadership and into your communication. So you'll get a chance to do that, and also go a lot more deep into the nervous system, the physiology, and how that influences the way that you show up in hard conversations. So it will be 2-hour workshops every other week on Zoom over the spring. If you complete the course and all the additional work in between, you'll also get a LinkedIn certification in conflict resolution and inclusive leadership. And it will also include, Katya, I think we lost your screen. It also includes integration sessions every week. And this is a really important part of our philosophy, because so many trainings out there just bombard you with huge amounts of information and don't actually give you space to integrate it and digest it and put it into practice. So every week you'll get a chance to actually test out some new tools and skills in the situations in your life and get live coaching and feedback with the group. as you go. And the other really valuable part is, of course, as Katya mentioned, being in a cohort of other leaders, other people who want to engage in tough conversations in a difficult way, and being part of this really powerful community of practice, which will sustain, yes, for the duration of this program, but also far beyond. And since all of you are here, we currently have a really special early bird price that is $595 for the program for between, if you register before the end of the year. We also do group discounts. So if you want to bring a group of 5 or more people from your organization, from your workplace to join together as a team, you can reach out to us directly and we can organize that for you. And just especially for this group of people, because you showed up and you learned with us here today, you get an additional $100 off the early bird price if you want to register by the end of the day tomorrow, in the next 24 hours. You can use the code LinkedIn100 that Katya put in the chat. We'll also send it in a follow-up email with the link to this site where you can get all the information and details and read through it in a lot more detail. All to say that we are really excited to open the doors to this program to all of you and welcome you into our community of lifelong learners. And Katya, I'll pass it off to you to close us out.
Thank you, Mallory. Thank you for sharing about the course. I'm so excited. I will be one of the supporting facilitators for the course. And I want to close it out by saying thank you to all of you for being here. Making change really requires speaking up and being able to have tools to speak up in challenging conversations. And I know that you're here, came here because you're change makers, you're evolutionaries. And so I really think in order for you to have the impact you want to make, this is one of the most meaningful investments that you can make of your time to learn how to regulate your nervous system, how to show up as a leader in conflict. And I know, me included, that for many of us, what we inherited is really hard. It may feel overwhelming at first, but know that it is possible to shift those things. It just takes time, practice, and commitment, and we're doing it alongside you. So my team, we created these 7 skills, but we practice them all the time. We are students of this. We're not experts. We are always practicing these things. I had to practice some nervous system regulation this morning. It's something that I'm doing all of the time. So we're in this together, and it's so great to be a part of a community of people having these conversations intentionally. So if you also feel like I don't have a lot of people in my life to work on these things with, right? A community that's supporting me in my professional growth in this way. That's one of the most meaningful parts of being in community with all of the evolutionaries in our reach. So I want you to imagine for yourself as we close this session and move to the Q&A and discussion. And if you have questions, please stay. We're here to answer them. We can show you behind the scenes of the course. We can answer any questions or doubts you have about it. I want to hear about those things. I want to have conversation with you about this. So to close out for those who need to leave, I invite you for a moment to come back to yourself and imagine yourself having integrated even these first 3 skills into your own practice in how you approach conflict, and the change that could be possible through just pausing and breathing before responding to conflict. Okay, so just think about that. Imagine yourself in a regulated nervous system approaching conflict in a conscious way. And I invite you to bring your palms together and rub them, generate some energy towards that vision. Take a deep breath in. Blow that vision into your palms and hold it at your heart for a moment. And we'll clap together on the count of 3. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much for being here, for taking an hour out of your life to listen, to learn, to reflect. I'm so grateful for your presence, and I want to open it up to questions you have, reflections, thoughts, feedback, what's going on for you right now, and what might we be able to answer for you if you're considering taking our course. Ask.
Well, I have a question. How big is the group going to be, and how will you ensure that we'll get individual attention?
Great question, Mallory. So we hope to have up to 100 participants in this group, but we design the course so that you're in small groups throughout the entire experience. So you get a pod group of 3 to 4 people that you get to reflect with every single week. So no matter who you are, you're going to get individual attention there. And then in the integration sessions, you can bring your real challenges, your real experiences, your real struggles, everything that you're working through. And we do hot seat coaching one-on-one in the integration sessions. So actually working through real challenges, one-on-one attention in those settings is what the integration settings are for. Any other? Yes.
Yes, I have a question. Hi guys. So you said it's 5 p.m. on every Thursday,
Great question.
or is
Yes,
it
5:30.
5:30? Is there a flexibility to um to move to a different time slide, date, stuff like that,
Mm.
depending on the group that gets selected? Let's say if Thursdays are not good, or is there any flexibility? So here's my question: is there any flexibility with the dates, and time, and also this that's it basically.
Yeah, it's a great question. We're trying to find a time that isn't during the workday because it's so challenging for people to take time out of work to do something like this. So the answer for now is this is the schedule that we're
This
proposing. And
Gotcha.
if you have to miss a session for any reason, you're always going to get a replay of what happened. And you have the whole online platform, which I'll show to close the session today. So just a sneak peek for those of you who are still here. You get access to our whole online portal through the course. So you see it's not just the sessions every week. We have the sessions and then we have coursework in between. So you have exercises that you're moving through, breath work, all kinds of different leadership practices, additional resources. Every session you get the recordings and the slides. And we also give you a 30+ page guidebook to work through the 7 skills. There's also a feed where we all share throughout the course. So you're engaged in all the different content, and we also share all the recordings and makeup assignments. So if you do miss something, you can always watch the replay. You can always still be a part of it in that way. And there's also all the members, events, and you're part of our whole online community if you decide to join our community of evolutionaries. So you get access to all that content for the rest of your life.
The
All
other
right,
thing
any
I'll add is that if you know this time doesn't work for you, but there's a group at your organization or in your community that all wants to take this course together, you can reach out to us and we can organize a cohort. It has to be minimum 20 people who want to, we can facilitate this program just for you and just for your group or just for your team at a time that works for you. So if that's something that's interesting to you, please reach out to us and I'll put some links in the chat.
Yes, we want to make it work. The last thing I'll share is that after the early bird ends, which will be at the end of the year, so highly recommend that if you feel like, yes, I want support with this, register now. This is the cheapest that it will be. After the early bird ends, we will also open some space for scholarships. So if you do need financial assistance or support, we have an application for that. So no one should be turned away due to price. If you want to be a part of our training, you can always reach out to us and we will find a way to make it work. So I hope to see as many of you in our course in March as possible. And if you're watching this replay and you have questions, we're going to share a link in the follow-up email to a 15-minute call with me where you can ask me one-on-one, not in front of other people, any questions that you might have, any concerns you might have. I'm here to hold space to talk to you and see if this is a right fit for you, because I know for a fact that over 2,000 people have taken our programs and more than 90% of them report having real tools to take into their life after completing the training. So I want to empower all of you with all of those tools, and we're here to support you and we're here to answer your questions if you have them. So thank you to those of you who are still here. I want to leave space. If you're still here and you have a question, please ask it. And if not, we'll close the session for today. Okay, great.
If there are no questions, I'll just add one last thing, which is we do these free monthly online workshops on all different topics once a month, either on this format or through LinkedIn Live. So if you want to stay connected and keep learning with us, you can keep doing that and being part of our community for free too. So just make sure you join our newsletter. I put the link in our chat where you'll get the information about all the other free workshops and events that we do on a monthly basis too, for our community as well. And if you are interested in bringing our work to your team, whether this program or a retreat or other type of team building or leadership development experience, there's also a contact link that you can get in touch with us, and we'll reach out to you to set up a call to chat about that too.
Thank you, Mallory. Okay, does anyone have a reflection or anything you want to share before we close? Doesn't have to be a question. Great. Seems like we're complete. Thank you so much for being here, for bringing your presence, your energy, your curiosity, your open-mindedness. It's really a privilege to get to share space and share these tools with as many people as possible. And know that, if there are others in your community that you think this would be supportive to, share it with them. Sharing is caring. The more people that have these tools in their tool belt, the better place the world will be. So thank you so much. And we hope to see you at the next session. And please come off mute and say bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
So glad to see you.
Bye, Katya.